So today we're gonna give the old DR350 an oil change. I'm gonna do the full oil change that involves removing the skid plate and flushing out the mesh filter that's in the frame. It's a bit more work, but better being safe than sorry, I guess. By removing the four 12mm bolts that hold up the skid plate. These might be a bit tight if it's the first time doing it. Just use good tools and you'll be fine. Now it's time to remove the oil drain plug, 17mm, crack it loose. I always heard the trick is push really hard into the engine and then drop it. Well, didn't work. It's a bit black, but it's a motorcycle, so there's usually some clutch and whatever junk in there. Now that that's about done, it's time to remove the 14mm frame drain plug. Should be pretty loose. I'll just put in the engine plug to keep it from dripping everywhere while I drain the frame, because there's always some drops coming out. Now be careful with this stuff, because it will probably jet out. While the engine and frame are draining, I like to move on and remove the filter cover. It's just 3 8mm bolts. These shouldn't be too tight. You should be able to remove them pretty easily. As you probably could tell there's always some oil under the cover. There's a spring underneath the cover to keep the filter in place. So just like to push it in, just so I can remove the bolts easier. I always like to give it a once over, just to see if there's any metal in there. Just push the pleats slightly outwards, and I don't see anything metallic or shiny, so it's probably fine. I like to use high flow filters. The reference is HF136. You have to be mindful that the filter has an opening on one side and it's covered on the other side. If you look at the inner, what is this, filter housing, there's a dimple for the oil to come out of the engine. So you put the oil inwards to the dimple and off you go. Just to give the cover a once over, just make sure everything's straight. Make sure the O-ring is still reusable, which this one is. Not hard, it's not square, so it will seal just fine. Keep in mind that these are 8mm bolts going into aluminium, so be gentle. You don't have to torque them too much, because the O-ring will do the sealing. An old trick is to hold the wrench like this instead of holding it on the handle, so you then don't have as much leverage. Give it a little bit of force, that should be good. Now it's time to remove the hose that goes into the frame. It's held in by a ring clamp. You can either use a Phillips screwdriver or a 6mm socket. I always prefer to use a socket because the contact patch is much larger. It's just a matter of pulling gently on the hose and it will come out. Some more oil will probably dribble out. Just leave that to drain. Now to remove the wire mesh, I like using a deep socket just to get in there and twist it out, because using a regular wrench can usually result in some stripping. This is the wire mesh. As you can see, there is some stuff on it, but I think it's just silicone because it's soft and pliable. Just give it a once over, make sure it's not clogged, and then it's ready to reinstall. Just make sure not to over tighten it, just give it a slight nudge. Put a hose back over it, retighten the worm clamp. Be sure not to over tighten the clamp as well, because it is soft steel. And now it's time to put the plugs back in. First the one on the frame. Once again, B channel. There is a copper gasket in there, so the copper does the sealing, not the bolts. And now the engine plug. I always start these things by hand. Snug it down, and I have to go monkey on it. And now we move on to the skid plate, which is honestly probably going to be the hardest part. Just make sure that everything's aligned. Just put in the bolts ever so slightly, one at a time. Make sure everything's aligned and in place before you tighten any which one of them down. Mainly because this is a skate plate, so it's probably been through some things in its life. Now it's just a matter of putting in the oil. Since we did a full oil change and filter, I'm going to put in the 1.9 liters that the manual recommends. Now it's just a matter of starting the bike and checking our work. Now it's just a matter of checking if there's any leaks. And there you go. Just some simple tools. Maybe the hardest part is the mesh filter, the deep socket one, but with a wrench, a 19mm closed box end wrench, you can probably get it out, and that's about it.